What in the heck is up, guys? It's Jacob here, and today I'm doing a video response to one of my comments on the pfSense firewall video. I'm gonna go ahead and read you guys the comment. So it's written by some guy, Anton Presence, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but one of those. And he writes, how would you set up a wireless router to a pfSense router? I can't get the two to run side by side. Can anyone do a full video on this? That's what I'm doing right here. So instead of having the problems of just using a compatible wireless NIC cards, I wanted to just stick with a wireless router on the pfSense router. But it's a bitch to get them to run together. I bet I'm missing something out on the configs. Well, I'm sure that's what it is. Well, see, for pfSense is sort of an operating system, so it runs on a dedicated machine. So I mean, no matter what, you're not going to get a wireless router to run pfSense. I don't think that's what you're asking. I don't think that's what you want. But a wireless router can't simply have it. It doesn't have enough storage. It doesn't have enough processing. It doesn't have enough anything to directly run pfSense. So you actually have to have a physical machine, like a computer or a server or some type, to run a pfSense box, because it runs in FreeBSD, which is, let's just say, a Linux type of operating system, and not really Linux, but and then it has pfSense kind of as embedded inside of it. So you would need NIC cards that are compatible. The problem is let's just say you go to the store and you buy a NIC card and you throw it in your computer. Well, it's going to come with some drivers that you install, and most likely they're going to be for like Windows or, maybe some Linux drivers, but probably not. It's probably just going to be for Windows because they assume everyone in the world uses Windows, which is not true. And with stuff like this is just where it becomes, your background knowledge and how far you know. As far as getting those NIC cards to work, and it can be very, very challenging to get a NIC card that you bought from the store to work in a computer that is not running a Windows operating system. So I don't know what type of machine you're running. That would definitely help a lot if you said what kind of machine you were running, like the device. It doesn't say that anywhere in here. It just says also the addresses. The LAN address 192.168.1.1 and the wireless address is 192.168.1.2, but that doesn't help anything at all. You do need two NIC cards no matter what, because you have to have one that's going to be your WAN and one that's going to be your LAN. So the LAN one would distribute DHCP addresses and whatnot, and your WAN is going to connect to your internet. And the camera's getting out of focus on me there. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and show you how I have mine set up. I have mine set up sort of on these server type of boxes. I do have a video on how I have mine set up. I'll show you ways you can set it up. Like I said, I don't know what machine you're setting it up on, but you have to have at least two NICs that will work, and then you can stack a router on top of that, which I have done. I'll show you the settings for doing that, just in case it's your settings. But there is a way to tell if your NIC cards are running right or not, to see if that is the problem, if it's the compatibility with your NICs or if it's the the settings. So let's go ahead and take a look at my boxes, and I'll show you good examples of what you could use for a pfSense box. So let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. Alright guys, like always we end up back at the rack. So here we are at the rack. Let's go ahead and open it up real quick. So I showed you guys this many times before, so I'm not going to really talk about it, but this is my pfSense box right here. It's actually a super micro server. It was sold by Citrix for an access gateway, so it was originally an access gateway. But when I bought it, I didn't have the credentials or anything to actually use that, so I just kind of wiped it and put pfSense on it. So any server type of box usually has two network ports on it, 2 gigabit Ethernet ports. That's very, very standard and typical for any type of a server computer. I'd always recommend, if you can, pick up a box like this. It can be simple as this. This is just a very simple. This is perfect, way more than plenty enough to run pfSense. I mean, you could also run it on something as big as a whole PowerEdge server. That's way too much of an overkill. I mean, that's a huge overkill for something of this size. All you need is something like this. So you can just pick up a super micro server. They run quiet. They're relatively cheap. I grabbed this one on eBay. I stole this thing. I literally stole it for 12 bucks. 12 bucks. I got this whole entire box for 12 bucks. Best 12 bucks I've ever spent. I know it cost the guy more than $12 to ship it, so I felt kind of bad, but I won it on eBay for 12 bucks. No one else bid on it. So that was fantastic. Whenever you're looking on eBay, always look for ones that say, I'm not sure about it. I don't know if it works. It's untested. And that just pretty much means they don't know what the hell they're talking about. The operating system may not work or whatever, but if you're going to throw pfSense on it, it's a steal. Another great example is this box right here that I have. I've never really talked about this. This is my load balancer. I'm not using it right now. You can also image this with pfSense. It's got 2 gigabit Ethernet ports on the front. As long as you got those 2 gigabit Ethernet ports, you're good. The thing is they come built in on the actual motherboard, and that makes it so much easier to use with pfSense. If it only had one Ethernet port, you could throw an Ethernet card in there to get a network card and to get another Ethernet port, and you could have 2 Ethernet ports. But again, the driver issues are going to be very, very complicated. You know, you're going to have some experience with that. So you're always going to need 2 ports no matter what. But if you only have 1 port, you can't use a network card. So if you're going, well, Jacob, I have this old piece of crap computer laying around my house. It's not really that great of a computer. It's an old Dell, you know, Optilex, whatever, or something like that. And it just kind of sits around and collects dust. It's a doorstop right now. Can I use that for pfSense? And the answer is yes. It'd make an excellent pfSense box. I mean, you don't need a processor that's, you know, 900 megahertz is absolutely fine. A gig of RAM, golden, you know? It's just network, it's just like networking gear, you know? It's not like it's actually like hosting a website, like a world-class website or anything. It's just processing, you know, networking, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's not that much. So you can use old computers and stuff like that and image them with a pfSense image, and you're good. So you do have to know how to load an image and an operating system, but if you need help with anything, whether it's loading pfSense or getting a network card to work with pfSense, that's going to be very specific to each and every one of your guys' cases, depending on what you're running. Hop on over to my website, go into the forums at thehackhub.com, go to thehackhub.com/forums, and just make a post there, and I will respond to you and help you every step of the way to get pfSense running on your box with a network card if you needed it. Because it can be very complex to get the drivers for a network card to work in your box. But it doesn't have to be a server box like this, but these are great. I'd recommend you pick one of these up on eBay for like 20 bucks, and but you can use a computer. So let's go ahead and take a look at the settings. Once we have it set up, let's take a look at the settings for this box to show you what it would look like if it was set up correctly, and where we can trace our issues if it's not set up correctly. So let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. Alright guys, so this segment this is my second time recording it because the first time I did it without the audio, so that's pretty embarrassing, I'm not gonna lie. But I finally got around to doing it a second time. So here we are. This is SSH into the actual machine itself. So when you download pfSense, there are 2 different types of images. I just want to let you guys know this. There's a regular image, and there's also a console image. Now you'll know this because when you download it, it'll say console, or it'll just be a regular image. The difference is a console image will actually have all the drivers, not the drivers, but you know, all the stuff built in the operating system to where you can actually physically connect a monitor and a keyboard to your machine itself and set everything up through that. If you do not have a console image, you cannot actually connect a monitor and a keyboard to directly to the machine. It won't do anything. If you hook up a monitor, you're not going to get any display output. If you hook up a keyboard, you're not going to be able to actually control anything. You will only be able to secure shell into the server. That's a little bit more difficult. So I'd recommend for the initial setup, you have a monitor and a keyboard, and you just do everything from there. And that makes life much easier. You will end up with something like this. Now, this is a secure shell. Secure shell, if you do not have a monitor and a keyboard, or you don't have the console image, you can still secure shell into it through what's it called? A serial port. Now, I'm actually connecting secure shelling into it through the network 10.0.0.1, the IP address I gave it to it. The problem is if you're initially setting it up, it doesn't have an IP address yet, because that's what you're going to go in there and set up, right, is the IP address. So if it doesn't have an IP address yet, you cannot connect to it through the network. So that's a little bit of an issue, and this is where a lot of people have trouble. This is where most people have trouble with pfSense, is working in this type of an environment, because it takes a little bit more knowledge and you have to know what you're doing, and there's no GUI. But it's very, very simple to set up, so I'll show you guys. Once you have set it up, you'll notice that I have the two interfaces that I was talking about. We have the WAN and the LAN. Now, this probably won't be here at first. I've already set this machine up, so that's why it's here. So let's go and actually set up the interfaces like we would initially. Let's just pretend we haven't set anything up yet, and we're going to set up the interfaces. So we're going to actually use option 1, which is assign the interfaces. So if I hit option 1, you can see here's the first way you can tell if your box is running right or not. If it shows the two network cards, you're good. Because like I said, you have to have two network cards. You have to have a WAN and a LAN. So it shows them here as EM0 and EM1. They may be different letters, different numbers. It doesn't matter as long as you have two network cards. Here's their MAC addresses. That'll differ from machine to machine. And they are both up. You're good. So you have to have two network cards that show up, at least two. You can have more, but two network cards that show up and they are up and running, you know? So once you have that, you're good. So it's going to ask you if you want to set up VLANs. I always just hit no. It doesn't, you don't really need it. So here's what you do. It's asking you to enter the WAN interface name. So what interface do we want to use for the WAN? Well, for the WAN, I'm going to go ahead and use EM0, my first network card. So I'm going to type in EM0, and I'm going to hit enter. So now it knows that we are using EM0 for the WAN, so that's going to be our WAN interface. And then our LAN, it's going to ask us what interface do we want to use for our LAN. So what we're going to use is EM1, the second card. Okay, and now what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to set a name. We're just going to go ahead and skip that. So now what it says is the interfaces will be assigned as followed. It's going to have WAN on EM0 and LAN on EM1. So this is assigning the specific WAN and LAN ports to your specific network cards. And again, make sure these cards are actually showing up. If they aren't, if you do not see two network cards like I showed you up here, if these two do not show up, then go ahead and hop on over to my forum site and ask me why it's not working, because that's going to be a specific detailed question due to your particular case. That's going to be different on everyone's case. Most likely it's going to be a driver issue or something like that. So, but you do have to have the two network cards, or you're not going to be able to go any further than this. So once we've set it up, it's going to ask us, do we want to proceed with these being WAN and LAN assigned to those cards? Normally you'd hit yes. I'm actually going to hit no, because I'm afraid it might restart my network cards and I'll lose this secure shell session. So it'll probably cut me off if I do it right now. Because I've already assigned them, I'm just going to go ahead and hit no. But you would, of course, hit yes and save the changes. So now what we're going to do is, I don't even know how to get out of this. But anyways, we're going to hit a new option. Let's just say option number, it actually closed the network connection for some reason. Okay, here it goes. So enter an option. So now what we can do is set the IP addresses. So we're going to go ahead and set the IP addresses for these interfaces. So let's go ahead and do that. Option number 2. So we'll just go ahead and hit 2. And it did actually close us out. So we'll restart this session real quick. Run putty. Okay, so now it's going to ask us if we want to set the IP addresses. We're just going to hit option 2 to set the IP addresses. So it's going to say we have two available interfaces. We can set the IP address for our WAN, or we can set the IP address for our LAN. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and hit 1 because it is going to give us our WAN address. So for WAN, it's going to ask us, do you want to configure it using DHCP? 99.9% of the time, you're probably going to want to hit yes, because your modem in your house will give your WAN address. It will assign your pfSense box your WAN address. It will give out your address. And this is your global IP address up here. This is my global IP address. You can see it says DHCP next to it. So this way, if your IP address ever changes, it'll WAN will automatically just adapt to that because it's DHCP. Your modem is assigning that IP address to the pfSense router. So the only time you would not do this is if you had like business class internet and you for sure had a static address. Then yes, you would just put in your static address. Besides that, you're just going to want to have it DHCP, and your modem will handle this IP address. And that will change, obviously, from time to time because it's DHCP. So just go ahead and hit yes for that. So it's disabling it for me because I already have it enabled, and it's going to re-enable it, and it's going to restart. So now it says we can actually access our web interface at HTTP DHCP, which would be the current address. It doesn't show the address here, but that would be your current global IP address, and then on port 8085. Now for you guys, it'll actually default to port 80, so you won't even have to worry about the port numbers. I have mine set to a non-standard port number just because I'm running my website on port 80, so I can't put this on 8080 or port 80, so I have to put it on 8085. But that's how you can access it through the global IP address. It says enter to continue. So we're also going to go ahead and hit the LAN IP address. Now this is more of how you'd want to connect to your web interface, is using the LAN. So let's go ahead and hit option 2 again to set the IP addresses. This time we're going to do option 2 for the LAN, and it's going to ask us to enter an IPv4 address. In my case, I'm going to do 10.0.0.1. This is actually your gateway address because the pfSense box is acting as a gateway and it is handing out IP addresses. It is going to be the main gateway address, and this is what's going to create your IP scheme for all your IP addresses. So let's just say, you can put literally whatever you want in here. I like 10.0.0.1 because it's a very simple scheme. If you guys have ever seen my other videos, my servers are 10.0.0.2.3.4.5. It's so much easier, and it's just a very simple and easy IP address. That's what I like. It's what Netgear uses in some of their routers, and that's where I got it from. But I like it a lot, so I've actually kept it. You guys are probably familiar, everyone's familiar with 192.168.1.1. You could also do that. You could do any address you possibly want in here, as long as it can be an actual IP address. Usually you're going to start out with your lowest number because, again, this is actually going to be your DHCP server. It's going to be what hands out all the addresses. So you can put whatever you want in there. I'd recommend just keep it simple like me and 10.0.0.1. But if you like the other IP schemes, use those. So go ahead and hit that. And now it's going to say enter the bit count. So what this means is, what do you want your subnet masks? This again is a personal preference depending on what your requirements are. It really will work any way you want. I personally like 255.255.0.0. They do mean different things, guys, so it's not like, oh, what one looks prettier. They do mean different things, but for your personal network, most of the time, 255.255.0.0 will always work for pretty much everything. If you're in a bigger, network, use 255, 255, 255.0. But for me, you just match it up to whatever you want. I'm going to use 255, 255.0.0, so I'm going to use bit count 16. It's just so you don't have to type up the whole subnet mask, you just put in the bit count. So there we go. It's going to ask us if we want to enable the DHCP server. This is not asking us if we want this card to be assigned a DHCP address. It's asking us if we want to host a DHCP server on our entire network from this LAN card. You're always going to want to hit yes because you want the pfSense box to hand out IP addresses. You want it to lease IP addresses to other devices on your network. If it's going to be your main router, it's going to have to be the DHCP server as well. So go ahead and hit yes, and just allow that. And so enter the start address of the client range. What this means is when it is giving out DHCP addresses, what address do you want it to start at? So it's gonna start handing out IP addresses to whatever device is connected to it. So if I plug a computer into this pfSense box, it's gonna give it an IP address because it has the DHCP server. So what this means is what address do you want to start at? What is the lowest address? Now remember our IP scheme is 10.0.0.1. Now I like to keep all my static addresses .2 between .2 and .100. I start giving out DHCP addresses at .100 and higher. This is just to keep the confusion away. Because let's just say I have a machine that, let's just say I have, if I started it out at 10.0.0.2, that would work. But let's just say I have a machine that's plugged in and the pfSense box will lease the IP address 10.0.0.2 to that machine, right? But now I want to plug in a server and I want a static address of 10.0.0.2. Well, because it's already leased that address, that's going to be an IP address conflict, and I'm never going to know really what IP addresses are already leased and what ones are actually a static address. So in that case, I know that all my addresses of .100 or higher are leased. So I usually like to start out my leasing at .100 and keep everything that's static at a lower address, 10.0.0.3, .4, .5, .6. So go ahead and do that. You can do it however you want. That's personal preference. And it's going to ask you where you want it to end. You can only go so high. We're going to actually end at 10.0.0.254. So it'll end at 254. It's going to go ahead and set all that up. And so now it says we can enter the browser, the web interface at 10.0.0.1/8085. This is our local address. Again, for you guys, it'll be port 80, so you won't have to even worry about the port number. Just type in the IP address. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Here's my YouTube channel. Whoop-de-doo. So here's 10.0.1, port 8085. I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of, act like you guys don't see any of this because I don't want you guys to see any of my credentials. So we log in here, and boom. This is it. So what I want to show you guys is the two interfaces. So we have the LAN and the WAN interface. This is really all we need to look at. Of course, they need to be enabled. It has LAN, that's the description. It's a static. So this is a static IP address. It is giving out DHCP addresses, but that's not to be confused that it has a DHCP address. It has a static address. That will always be 10.0.0.1, and this is our DNS gateway on our entire network. This is going to hand out all the IP addresses. So this is our gateway. 10.0.0.1, and it's got a bit count of 16, which means it's 255.255.0.0. So that's creating our submask or our entire network. Everything that connects to this is going to be connecting through this gateway and using this subnet mask. Okay, so now we have the WAN interface. The WAN interface is using DHCP because it is getting its IP address from our modem. So the modem is giving it the IP address. It's the WAN interface. It's enabled. This is where we're getting all of our internet from. Don't change anything else. Always just remember, guys, when you're done, hit save. And always, 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 this gets me every time, apply the changes. If you don't, it will not work. It will literally not work. I don't know why they did it like this, but this gets me every single time. I'll go, why the hell isn't it working? I'll like do some port forwarding or something, and I forget to apply the changes. It always gets me. I'm so used to just clicking save, and here we go, it's running. No, you have to apply the changes before they actually work. So that's pretty much all there is on the pfSense side of it. So what we have is the pfSense box is now leasing IP addresses on the 10.0.0.1 IP scheme, and it's leasing them of .100 or higher, and our static addresses can be whatever static address we want. We just have to have whatever is connecting to it a static address. So now I'm going to show you how we would set a router up with this. Let's go ahead and take a look at the router. So I'm going to type in my router IP address. Alright guys, so the box comes up. It's asking us for our passwords and crap. For this one, it's just default stuff because it's really behind the firewall and everything already, and this is just Wi-Fi. This isn't anything crucial. I don't care that really people get into this or anything at all. It doesn't really have any significance on my network, just that it broadcasts Wi-Fi. So this is going to vary from router to router. It really just depends on what you're running. In our case, this is a Netgear router, so a lot of routers will have some type of interface like this. Every single router will, but your wireless router will allow you to set up the settings in it, and it'll be different between a Linksys or if you're running DDWRT or something like that. But it'll generally all be the same. All the settings will be the same. It'll just be laid out different. So you'll have to navigate your way through whatever situation you're in. If you need help, again, always hop on over to my forum site, ask questions there. I'll help you every step of the way through whatever you need. So we go to the Internet tab. Now, there are two ways to do this. We can get the address dynamically from the ISP, which means basically, normally you would hook this up to a modem, so that's why it's asking for the ISP. But it's basically, if you check this, you're getting a DHCP address. Now remember, our LAN port, the LAN port on the pfSense box is giving out DHCP addresses. It is handing out IP addresses to whatever is connected to it. So if we connect this router to the LAN side of our pfSense box and we have a DHCP, we have it getting the IP address, the pfSense box will lease it a .100 address or higher. So we'll give it an IP address. That is probably the easiest way to do it. If you do that, if you have the internet port getting the IP address dynamically from the DHCP server, then your pfSense box will take care of everything for you because we set up the DHCP server in the pfSense box. So it will hand out the IP address to this. We can alternatively use a static address. This is what I'm doing because that way I know my router is always going to be the same IP address. It will not change. The router itself will not change, which is good. We do not want it to change, or I don't want it to change. It doesn't really matter if it's DHCP or static, but I personally like to know in my head all the time that, hey, the router is constantly going to be at this address. It's not going to change. So again, we have to match our IP scheme. So in this case, we're going to have the router's going to request an IP address rather than get an IP address from the server. It's going to request to take this IP address from the pfSense box. So now we're saying we're going to connect to the pfSense box, which is, again, 10.0.0.1. That's our LAN card. That's the one that we set up in the pfSense box. The gateway, like I said before. Okay. We're going to match that subnet mask, that 16-bit count, that 255.255.0.0. So there we go. It's good there. And then we're going to request any IP address we want between 10.0.0.2 and 10.0.0.254. Now, like I said, I like to keep all my static addresses lower, so we have a 10.0.0.24. And so this is going to keep the IP address for this router, and it will now connect to the pfSense box and request this IP address, and they will communicate between each other. And that's how you would connect the wireless router, your wireless router, to the pfSense box, and they can work together. The pfSense box will provide everything you need. You know, all the firewall, the caching, the logging, everything you possibly could need, the traffic monitoring, traffic limiting, whatever you want to do. The pfSense box will do that for this. So that's pretty much it. It's very simple. The DNS servers, you might also want to set your DNS servers to 10.0.0.1. You can't use a DHCP DNS server unless you're using DHCP up here. So if it's going to ask you to put in a DNS server name, just go ahead and put in your gateway address for that as well, and it'll work just fine. So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Let's go ahead and show you guys how you would hook that up. So let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. Alright, so here's the pfSense box itself. So again, EM0, that's the first network interface. That is our WAN, W-A-N. That is the modem. That's where it gets its internet access. Remember, it is getting the DHCP address. It is having an address assigned to it by the modem. That is where our internet connection comes in. It goes into this box that provides the internet connection to everything. This is our LAN, L-A-N. This is the what gives out DHCP addresses to all the devices on the network. This is where you would connect your router if you just wanted to connect just a router. Or you can go into a switch. This particular one actually goes into the switch up here, and it goes into all the servers and everything, and it goes into the huge jumbled mess of networks. Then on the switch is also connected the wireless router. That's what we looked at on the settings. So the wireless router actually is plugged in like right here. It's on the port 23, but I'll show you guys how it would be hooked up. So you can see that we have the internet port right here on the router. Let's go and take a look. That internet port, and then you have the 4 local ports. The internet port is actually going to feed right into the output, the LAN of the pfSense box, the LAN, and that's going to be given either a DHCP address, or you're going to set your router up to acquire or ask for a static address, and it has to match the IP scheme that you have going on, the 10.0.0.1 or the 192.168.1.1, whatever you set up in the pfSense settings when you set up the box. In my case, I have the wireless router up here. It's the one that we looked at in the settings on the page, and it has its internet port. I'm not going to pull it out right now because it's actually, everything's like zip tied and it would be a pain in the ass to do. But the internet port on that is actually just feeding right into this port 23 on this switch, and that port is just getting an address from the actual pfSense box, which is the DHCP server on this entire network. So that's how you would actually hook it up. It's not very complicated, not too complex, so that's it. Alright guys, so that's pretty much it for this one. I hope this helped you. Anton Presents. I hope this helped you a little bit. I'm sorry that it was kind of a long video. I wanted to get into the details, all the details of it, and exactly to show you what you would need to set it up. I mean, realistically, these things take quite a bit of time to do. I mean, I took a little bit of time to sit around and figure it out myself for the first time I ever set up a pfSense box, but it's much easier to do in a server box with the 2 ports already there. If you do need to set up a network card, that can be difficult. Like I said, if you're having a lot of trouble, go ahead and head over to my forum site and I will help you on your specific case, or anyone. If you want to set up like a computer or something, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult. That's where a lot of people are going to get, lost, is in like the secure shell, and like when you actually set up the console and stuff, it's going to be very difficult. They're not used to just text, and like instead of like having like a graphical user interface where it just says, type in the network address and click next. It's not really quite that easy. It's just like, choose your settings. What do you want? And just put in the address, choose the bit rate and stuff like that. It's not, it's not very user friendly. You have to know your way around this already. You have to know what it's asking you. You have to know what to set up and like the order. You can't just SSH into it through an IP address if you don't have an IP address already assigned to it. So, I mean, there's a lot of things you gotta know, but it's pretty easy once you've got it down. So, I mean, that's pretty much it, guys. I hope this video did help you. If it didn't, like I said, throw a comment down below. Don't ask too many questions down below. If you're gonna ask questions, go over to my forum site. But hope this helped you guys out, and like always, guys, have a good one.